Travel isn't just about destinations, it's about the people you meet, the cultures you immerse yourself in, the stories you carry home. I'm Relebogile Mabocha, and on my travel feature, I take you on a journey beyond the guidebook. Each week, I connect with fellow travelers, insiders, and storytellers to bring you the heart of every place. Whether it's a hidden gem right here in South Africa or a dream destination abroad. Join me as we travel through conversations, memories, and inspiration. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Now, once again, in our travel segment today, we are profiling the travel story of ordinary Cape Townians who decided to take on an extraordinary adventure. With me in studio today are Rob and Muzzi Hoole, who just 10 days or so ago sailed into Simonstown, having completed an 8-year round-the-world journey on board their catamaran, the Lalamanzi. So what made them do it? Where did they go? What was life like on board? What were the highlights and the lowlights of spending such a long period at sea? We're going to find out as we do a bit of armchair sailing with them today, and I'm sure you have questions too. Please feel free to send them our way on the WhatsApp line 072 567 1567. Well, welcome to Cape Talk, welcome back to Cape Town, and welcome back to dry land, most importantly. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks, Pippa, and welcome to, and thanks to all your listeners as well.
It's so nice to have you with us. Rob, 8 years at sea, but I bet it took several years preparation for a journey of this scale. Do you want to take us back to when you first sort of conceptualized and started prepping for it?
Well, we did a dry run, so to speak, on a previous boat in 2008 when our children were still at school, and my daughter was approaching the end of the junior school period, and it seemed like a good time if we were going to take them out of the schooling to do it then. So we went away for a year, and we spent most of it on the west coast of Madagascar, and then up to Tanzania, and all the way up to the Kenyan border. And I think that was it wasn't our first trip, but that was the real sort of feeling for the cruising life. So that was in 2008. In 2014, I then bought Lalamanzi, but we'd actually sailed with the previous owners around Zanzibar and up to Tanga, the yacht club just near the Kenyan border. Okay. So we knew the boat and we knew the previous owners, so it seemed like a shoo-in at the time. So, yeah.
Was it as easy as all that, Muzzi?
I always say that trip to Madagascar was Rob's first midlife crisis. Okay. But it clearly wasn't over, because in 2014 he bought another boat. But no, it's been absolutely fantastic. It's been like another lifetime. Those 8 years have been sort of another entire lifetime.
So just the two of you the second time round, or did any of the family join you for parts of it or all of it?
Yeah, we our children did join us. Okay. The first time when we were in Colombia, and we went overland to Peru and with them, and then the second time, in fact, in the same year, to Panama, to the islands of the San Blas Islands, just south of the Panama Canal. Wow. And then once we were in the Pacific, it was just too far. So my daughter threatened us that we didn't have to come back for anything else, but when she graduated, we had to be there. So we did come back in 2019 as instructed. And then they joined us again when we had got my son in Indonesia, and then again in Thailand and Malaysia when we got
fantastic
down the line.
opportunities. So, I mean, jokes aside, coming back for a graduation in 2019, but you've basically been at sea besides those breaks through all of this time. Anybody who thinks back on the last couple of years will immediately see the giant red flag in that picture, namely COVID. What happened to you? Where were you when COVID struck? Where did you have to sort of weather it out?
Yeah, it was a strange thing, because we were in the Maluku province, sort of the middle Indonesia, at a town called Ambon. And Muzzi had gone off had left me there, and she'd gone off to London to see her sister, who was not well. And she was away in London, and I was on the boat on my own, and we watched the world increasingly degenerate. Yeah. And eventually we said, look, you've got to try and get back. And she contacted the airlines. The airline was cancelled. And then she said, well, then you've got to get back to Cape Town. So she got the last flight into Cape Town. My son picked her up at the airport in a surreal sort of atmosphere of nobody around. And then spent the next 7 months in our house in Komaki while with my son Matt, and I was on the boat on my own and faced with a bit of a dilemma. So I could then either go 800 odd miles west towards Bali, where there was a place I thought we could take the boat out and try and get back to Cape Town, or alternatively sail back about 600 miles to a place called Sorong in West Papua province. Sure. And because we'd been there before, I decided to do the latter, and the sail back was quite an interesting journey. But finally got there, got the boat out of the water, and got to the airport only to find that South Africa had closed down. So I went back to the boat, unpacked everything again, and then there was a repatriation flight that was organised about 6 weeks later, and again, I got to the airport, but this time the island that we were on closed down, and literally they pulled down the blind in front of. I was the last person in the queue, and so I turned around, went back to the boat, and decided that was it. I wasn't coming home, and unpacked the boat, put it back in the water, and we found out that there was about 4 or 5 other boats in a similar situation in a bay called Bessar Bay. Off the island of Wasai in the Bird's Head province. It's a strange place right in far eastern Indonesia in the Raja. It's the area is called Raja Ampat. A truly spectacular place, and that's where we spent the next year in this bay. So
hunkered down to ride out lockdown in anchored in the bay. Muzzi, how long was it before you were able to get back to Rob and the boat?
About 7 months.
7 months in total.
And when it did open up, there was a window of literally a couple of days, and I got through that window, and I flew back through this world, through empty airports, no lights on, dark, weird things where you had to sit in chairs and wait for all your temperatures to be taken, and one by one they processed each person. It was completely surreal. And I made it back, and I made it back to Sorong in West Papua. And there was Rob at the airport. I mean, it was just completely bizarre. And then we went and we carried on living in this bay with these other yachties where we took turns once a month to sail back to Sorong to stock the boat. We had people in Sorong. I mean, the whole trip was just about amazing people. And these people in Sorong would do our shopping for us because we weren't allowed to go into the shops, deliver it to the dock where we would pick it up and then take it back to the bay. And then those people who had gone to do the shopping weren't allowed to interact with anyone for 2 weeks. So we'd have people would come and visit you in their dinghies, and they'd hang off your yacht in their dinghies, and that's how you'd socialise.
Shot you across the water and throw the groceries overboard. I mean, we can laugh about it now, but it's a remarkable story of the kind of new levels of cooperation that had to be that were essential for survival at that period. As you say, it changes the whole story from being a story about visiting amazing and beautiful places and experiencing parts of the world that few people are able to go to interacting with humans on a level you never would have expected to, I would imagine. I mean, when you talk about this trip, is it the people that you speak about first, Rob, or the places?
Definitely the people, almost without doubt. And that's been all our travelling has been about the people. We're not, believe it or not, we're not great sailors. We are slow travellers. Yeah.
Okay.
So that to us, that's what it was about. Was how it's a way of travelling slowly. It's difficult to travel slowly overland. It's like lugging your caravan around with you, and that gives you the opportunity just to slow right down. And in fact, that's what COVID did to us was just to tell us that we were going too fast, and we needed to slow right down. And that was a great lesson because we'd been to that same bay a couple of times before and hadn't found it terribly interesting. We'd spent a year there and discovered the most incredible things. So we were going too fast, and then we decided thereafter to slow right down. and you knew when you had reached the right sort of time and a place when you go to a market and you'd be greeted by the local lady selling tomatoes, and that was the great thing, that human connection that one makes when one's not just there in a flying visit for a day or two.
Yeah, interesting. Just for anybody who's come in midway to this conversation, Rob and Muzzi Hoole with me in studio, who have just a few days ago returned at the end of an 8-year-long journey around the world on their 44-foot catamaran, Lalamanzi. And several people asking the million-dollar question about how you afford to be at sea for that long. Do you have jobs that you can do remotely from anywhere in the world? Is this something that you saved for decades? How is it possible?
Well, we both retired, but we live very frugally, and what we've said to other people who've asked the same question is how much does it? What does it cost? Well, it costs pretty much what you would spend at home. You've got different costs, so we haven't owned a car for 8 years. So there's none of those expenses, but yeah, I mean, your expenses are typically looking after the boat first and foremost, and then just living. So you can do it on virtually any budget. We've got a friend of ours on a 25-foot boat who's been out there 25 years now.
Sure.
On her own, she's into her mid to late 70s, single-hander, and she goes on a sniff of an oil rag. So, and there are people on monstrously big boats with enormous budgets. So anywhere in between. So you cut your cloth according to your means, I suppose.
Absolutely, yeah. Keith also asking a very important question. I think you travelled to 30 different countries along the way. That's a lot of visas and red tape to navigate. How does it work? He's asking, if you get to another country, enter their sea waters, what sort of permissions do you have to ask for? Muzzi, do you want to tell us more about what that process is like?
Yes. As South Africans and on South African passports, it was difficult. But for example, in the Caribbean, we chose mainly to visit the independent islands, where as South Africans we were welcomed. We didn't need visas, or you got visas on arrival. And that was amazing. We did spend about a month in Panama City trying to get visas for French Polynesia and New Zealand. And it was really, really difficult. I remember in the French embassy in Panama actually lying on the floor and weeping.
Oh my gosh.
But we did eventually get those visas. And a lot of our other friends who were sailing, they were saying, visas? What's a visa? And you were just like, oh my gosh. This is so unfair. Yeah, so, and another thing to say about Indonesia, where we spent so much time, during COVID, they really went out of their way to make it easy for us. They didn't make it difficult for us. They understood the limitations we had and during that time, and the Indonesian people were just unbelievable. We got all our vaccinations there. The clinics and hospitals we went to were just unbelievable. The people we met couldn't have done more for us. So it was just, and I mean, as Rob was talking about our friend Shirley, 78 now, I mean, she wanted a specific vaccine for her thing. So a little man got on his scooter and he drove off and he came back to this, what do they call them? Pandok. Yeah. And there she had the vaccine that she had requested. I mean, it was just unbelievable. Yeah.
I mean, what's striking me over and over again is you keep deferring to talking about the people, not the places. Most people expect a travelogue to say how beautiful this place was and this island was, and we'd go back to this one. I'm hearing over and over again what touched you most on this journey was the people that you met along the way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, there were some really, really beautiful places, and bizarrely, the two places that really stood up for us had no people at all.
Which one of those is a matter of interest?
The one was Swaru Atoll in the Cook Islands, and the other Chagos in the Indian Ocean.
Wow, which has just got its independence back.
Both,
I think,
yes, exactly. Yes. Torturous history.
Yeah.
But both uninhabited at the time. But for example, but nevertheless, just arriving in the Cook Islands in this remote atoll, you had to get pre-approval to go there from the government in Rarotonga, and they had two men on the island who were the immigration, customs, local law enforcement, and we'd come all the way through from the Spanish-speaking countries in Central America, and then through French-speaking French Polynesia. And we arrived in the Cook Islands, and there were John and Harry, and we could talk rugby, and it was just fantastic. So even in Swarro, the only two people there were a complete hit. Yeah,
amazing. I mean, I wish we could sit and unpick the details of this journey for another hour. But before we must hand over to the news desk, I just want to ask. I believe that as you pulled into Simonstown in the dark of night, you had a pod of dolphins escorting you in. Is that true?
That's true. When I left False Bay in December 2016, we were escorted out by literally hundreds of dolphins. And I was wondering whether they'd be there when we came back again. And sure enough, we came in.
Wow.
It was 40 knots plus, and it was howling wind and big sea, and we were taking water right over the boat. And as I looked out, I saw the bullets in the darkness, the bit of phosphorescence, and there they were. So they escorted us back into False Bay, and in fact, right back to False Bay Yacht Club. So, yeah.
What a story! Well, they did it first, but let us officially welcome you back home after all of the globetrotting of the last 8 years. And thank you both so much for coming into studio to share this amazing story with us. I hope you've got your land legs back by now, and we'll be able to take some time to sit and sort of appreciate and think about the exciting adventures you've had. I'm sure you'll be sought after dinner party companions for one thing for the coming months, and that you get the chance to share the story more widely, particularly the message you've given us today about the goodness of the people you met along the way. It's been extraordinary to hear that. Rob and Muzzi, welcome home, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pippa.